Good morning, lovelies. Thank you for tuning in. I had an experience this morning that I was just sitting with and trying to understand on a deeper level. And it started teaching me something that I don't think I've considered before. So I wanted to jump on and share that with you, seeing if our collective connection would help that to unravel to benefit us all. So this morning I had plans to do quite a few things, and I ended up out in public, out for a dog walk, getting a coffee, and I got the early signs of a migraine. This doesn't happen to me very often, but when it does, it's a pretty big sign for me to change what I'm doing and consider something different. So I changed my plans and came home, and I started to manage the migraine on the physical front, which I usually do. I've made a link between low minerals and migraines in the past. So I started topping up my electrolytes, Himalayan salt, and starting to increase the fluids to create movement. So here I am about 20 minutes later when I should really be hit by intense pain and all the associations with a migraine. But my energy is good. There is only faint pain in my head. But I started researching really quickly about different mechanisms that could be happening. And this is something that I realized. I think I had been touching on this for a long time, and it had been working its way into my belief structures, but I hadn't actually found language for it before. So when I'm looking at a symptom or an event or a circumstance that I'm trying to understand on many different levels, I can get stuck in the different paradigms of thinking and noticing that they are different perspectives on the same problem, but not being able to understand how they interconnect, right? And I was meditating on Omnipresence this morning about, are we actually constricted to being in one place at once? Is that something that is beneficial for my human experience to understand? Or is that a limitation on the possibility of my consciousness being in more places at once? So when we look into the quantum possibilities of our energy and the quantum possibilities of our consciousness, it seems to dissolve a lot of barriers and limitations in my mind. But I also needed time to sit with my guides to understand, well, is this important for me to be in one place at once? Is that important for my human understanding of this journey? Or am I using that as an anchor because I have fear and aversion to something bigger? So let's just keep it back on the migraine, because this is what was teaching me. I came home and I tried to understand even more the depths of what's happening on a physical level. So I go back to one of my familiar territories, which is health science, which is my degree, which is a beautiful conversation that I'm always going back to. And I could understand how I might be low in minerals. There wasn't really dehydration present, but if anything, I have noticed a sense of stagnation lately, not based on where I think I should be physically, based on that I'm moving energy more than ever, but my capacity is getting more. So I'm exercising and moving more than I ever had. I'm feeling hydrated and linked into a high metabolism and a high rate at which energy passes through me, but yet I can feel an urgency for more. So I'm not getting tired in the ways I used to. I'm actually craving more, but not really knowing where to put that energy. So I'm stalking that conversation as I look into other conversations. The symptoms for the migraine popped up at a similar location geographically to where the last one did. That was a few months ago, and I got a good message from that one, which was clear your schedule, take time to rest, you need to regroup. That wasn't the message coming through this time, but I got it from walking in the same geographical location. So I'm considering that and considering the land that I was on and wondering whether that's an influence. I'm also considering energetically what I am used to moving and clearing from my being. And that usually comes down to entity attachments or things out in my etheric layers that I'm picking up that I might not be consciously aware of yet, but I'm used to understanding when those glitches happen and working pretty quickly to eliminate them. There's also a psychological conversation that can come into that. How am I feeling emotionally? How is my mind processing my environment towards why I would need that symptom for a drastic change? And this is something that came through as a revelation as I was putting all those pieces of the puzzle together. And when I do put those pieces of the puzzle together, as you can probably notice, I'm trying to stay as open and aware and receptive as possible to every different paradigm of information that comes through. My curiosity leads me because I also know that I'm not just figuring out this for myself. I'm learning and understanding about this symptom so that I could apply that to someone else's experience or possibly find a sense of greater understanding that we could all benefit from. So what I've been stuck in the past is that there's a scientific reason for everything, but I'm called to find the spiritual reason for everything, but I haven't figured out how those two reasons can be together at once, sharing a version of the truth. So now I'm looking at many different paradigms for a symptom that I don't believe is purely one paradigm at once. And I know that I've brought this into my fields because I was meditating on Omnipresence this morning. And this morning I was thinking about how many different timelines could I invest in at once? How much could I break away from the linear parameters of where I think I'm going to be present in many different places at once and in many different outcomes? And how does that benefit me? How does that help me to grow and evolve? How does that increase my awareness and my understanding and my knowledge of what I'm doing here on this earth plane? So working with symptoms in the body is a beautiful grounded approach for me to think and feel into an experience and learn from what it's teaching me. The paradigm that I have decided to let go of quite a while ago, and that keeps on confirming to me, is that a symptom shows up because of something I did wrong. That doesn't work for me anymore. It is not a punishment system. It's not for me anyway. It's not that, oh, I didn't drink enough water yesterday, therefore my body has to compensate now. That paradigm has been limited for a long time for me, and I've chosen to expand so that I can get away from any kind of, even though it feels like a gentler self-criticism, it's still, oh, I must be punished because I'm doing something wrong, because my body wants me to do something and I'm not showing up to it. That doesn't particularly serve me anymore, that narrative. This is more about, well, what signal systems are going off that my consciousness isn't going to understand. So this is why I prioritize the time and the space alone for me to understand, okay, well, if this is a migraine, let's put it into that parameter, because the symptoms and the signs follow those links of which I've had before. My physiological understanding is pretty good, from a Western medicine perspective, from a Chinese medicine perspective, let's open that up a bit more and understand what my body is representing on another plane. And the fact that all of these different paradigms can exist all at once. So I could be picking up a energetic imprint on the land that I was walking on that throws off my alignment, my biofields. Highly possible. It has happened before. At the same time, my body could be registering low nutrients and minerals or hydration that may have come from vasoconstriction, that may come from a circulatory problem, that may come from a calling out to my body for a different dietary component. They can be at the same table in the same room at the same time and both be worthy, both have valid, concrete evidence to what I'm experiencing. There could also be a psycho-emotional paradigm coming through as well that are totally valid. Now, I've learned to move in and out of those different fragments of the same conversation through my work. Because sometimes someone walks in the door that picks up spiritual language about energy imprints, entities, about where we are putting our energy in the realms at what time. But then if someone walks through the door without that language, that prefers a more rational, science-based language, then I can flick over very easily to give them a rational approach to what they're experiencing. Once their mind can compartmentalize that information, they lock into receiving. And I'm a bit the same. Once I understand a small parameter of what I'm experiencing, I open to more, and then to more, and then to more. But if I can't understand or find a pattern or some kind of understanding in what I'm experiencing, that's when I am more likely to go into a disempowered, overwhelmed state. So when we are thinking about our experiences, this doesn't have to be bodily symptoms, it's just what's come up for me today. It could be an experience that happens to you, an event, a relationship, something you're not happy with in your life, something that is coming up for you over and over again, something that's triggered, something that feels like it's coming up and coming up. When we can look at it in omnipresence, when we can detach ourselves from being in a personal issue, which means it has any relationship to your identity, which we are now realizing is a bit of a trap because it prevents us from those beautiful understanding and that compartmentalizing that happens. So when we look at it in omnipresence, which means I can look at this from many different perspectives at once, and I do that by thinking, okay, the problem's on the table. I'm going to remove myself from the problem and now become one perspective. I'm one person standing around that table that can offer insights and advice. I also put different conversations that I resonate with around the table. So there's the science, there's the Chinese medicine, there's the psychology, there's the spiritual aspect, and I give every one of my guides a seat at the table always too. And they have their own personalities and characteristics of which shine a lens onto the same problem. And I put us all at equal weighting. It's a round table. We are all of equal status. We all have the same influence. There's no hierarchy there. We are all looking at the same problem. And I then start accepting and understanding and sinking into the narratives that are showing me different perspectives of the same problem. Not always with the intention to solve it, more with the intention to learn and understand where I might be limited in my capacity. The only reason why I would do this for a migraine is because it's here and it's shown up today and it has shown up in the past. all that indicates to me is that there's a pattern somewhere. So I look into it. I'm hungry for knowledge. I want to know more about it. But up until this point, I didn't understand how omnipresent I could be at the table of a problem. So that every person's narratives and understandings and perspectives can give me greater awareness around how to unlock myself from whatever that symptom was calling me back to. So I wanted to share that to see if anybody else has had a similar discussion around their symptoms, to see if that draws you away from your problems and making them personal and therefore bringing in more people at the table. Now, if you want to bring in narratives that serve you, if your problem is at the table and you want to bring in your mum and your dad, and you want to bring in your loved one or your friend that has so much good advice for you, or that plant ally that you've worked with before, or an animal ally that you've connected with, there is no absurdity to this if you learn something. And pulling in those different facets on the same problem can help you to expand your neural networking into areas that benefit you. What we're trying to do here is open up the capacity of your brain to understand things at a much bigger level. We can access different parts of our mind, but thinking that all those parts are rational, I think, is the limitation. We need to understand things on many different paradigms at once. This is why we are all becoming more aware and more understanding of the world. We have this driver in us, knowing that we have capacity that might not have been tapped into. We all relate to that. Maybe school didn't teach me everything I needed. Maybe my degree didn't teach me everything I needed, but they are certainly excellent narratives and conversational points to bring to that table. So it feels like a collaboration of people or entities or characters around the table, but those individual characters represent parts of your brains that you can light up, that you can awaken, that you can stimulate to look around problems, to be creative in your thinking and your awareness, to understand your symptoms from many different levels at once. And they don't have to be in competition. It doesn't have to be science versus spirituality, which is what I've thought for so long. It can be, well, here's two beautiful parts of the equation that make up the whole. Let's bring them all to the table. Let's give them all a seat. So let me know how you resonate with that. Put a problem on the table and change your perspective. I know a lot of people like to write or draw things as they work things out. Do that. Who's at the table? Give them a name or a characteristic, or at least as much intricate detail as possible. And step yourself into those shoes. Use their thoughts, use their vision, use their paradigms of thinking, use their heart space, and look at the problem from their perspective, their reality. And just tell me what you get that's any different to your own. See if you get a different understanding. Let me know how you go. There might be more on this today as it unfolds for me, but if you resonate, you can just send me a private message if you prefer. But if you like and comment, it tells me that you are interested. If you have resistance to this, then that's cool too. We can explore that. I am slowly offering more video content on YouTube, or else you can find me Facebook and Instagram. And for those that want to join an inner circle where we partake in group coaching calls, where we work together to understand things more, then join me on Patreon. It's such a beautiful platform. It's private and it's safe and it's fun and it's easy to use. So join me there if that resonates, and I'll see you next time. So much love, guys.